that. So my name's Ashley Hinson DeCall. I'm a graphic designer, web designer. I just started doing marketing consulting and branding a few years ago because I noticed it was just such a big need for my clients. And I've done some teaching in entrepreneurship and different things like that. So I'm really glad to have you all here. And it's just so cool to see the range of businesses and focuses of each of you. So I really look forward to this, and I think it's a good sized group because I'd love to give individual feedback. So we'll have a chance to do that as we go through. Now, if you do have any questions, you can either just, interrupt, feel free to do that. I want this to be more of a conversation, or just open up the chat box and type something. Jen's keeping an eye on that for me, so she can just holler at me if something comes up that I need to clarify. So in talking about branding, one of the things I was waiting to see if anybody mentioned this, because you may recall that branding is often referred to in relation to cattle, or at least that's where a lot of the definition comes from. In fact, branding has been around for hundreds of years, even way back into like cave paintings. Before there was even a name for branding, it's been around for potters and different things like that. But consistently, and even today, it's a mark of ownership. It's a symbol of quality. It's a way to stand out. So even in cattle branding, you see that that's true, and in logo marks today, it remains to be true. Okay. Now I've put some logos up on the screen, and this presentation is not about these companies because we don't even have most of these companies in this area, but I put them on the screen for a couple of different reasons. These are 6 out of the top 10 most recognized brands in the world, and the same principles that they have used to be successful we're going to be talking about today. So it doesn't matter how big or small you are, you can use the same principles of branding. The second reason I've put them on the screen is to illustrate the power of a visual medium, the visual medium. Notice that none of these logos have the company name accompanying them, but we pretty much all know most, if not all, of who these companies are. That just goes to show the power of the visual medium and how a logo can be recognized before you even know the name of the company. Now, modern branding began during the Industrial Revolution, and I am just going to talk a little bit about history because it's really cool and interesting, and a lot of the same things that were true then are still true today. Because that's when mass production, began, and logos were a way to stand out. They were a mark of quality and consistency, and the challenge was to create a level of trust with consumers. So once I know that I get a good product if I buy King Arthur flour, I'm going to always go back and request King Arthur flour because I know some of the other brands, now I'm talking about if I were in the 1800s or something, I know the other brands may be subpar quality. And that was before a lot of federal agencies were mandating these types of things. Now today, branding is still about quality and consistency, but those things are no longer unique. So I can go to the store and have the choice between, say, Advil, the brand name, and the generic brand ibuprofen, and I'm pretty much getting the same chemical composition, right? And they're going to solve the same problem. So why am I going to choose something that's slightly more expensive over the generic brand? Well, the challenge today is to create an emotional connection with consumers. So maybe, my grandmother always used Advil and she swore by it. She wouldn't take any of the other brands. She was like, got to get Advil. So that's an emotional connection. That's something that I remember hearing. So go after that brand, don't go after that brand. People will pay more for a brand that they know and they trust, even if they're going to get pretty much the same thing with the generic brand. But today, the challenge is to create that emotional connection with consumers. That's what I mean by that connection. In the example I just mentioned, it was that advice from my grandmother. So I had an emotional connection with that. So the emotional connection is based off of the personality of the brand. So we talked about the voice a little bit in the introduction. It also ties into the values of the company and how much you might relate to the values For example, social responsibility, how much they care about the environment is one good example. And the consumer experience. So what's the experience of going into a shop or a lodge? What is, what's the music playing in the background? Are there scents in the air? Is there wind blowing? All of those things, which are really more on a subconscious level, all of those things play into the customer experience and have been studied. So they have a big impact on that emotional connection. I bring up Whole Foods as an example of a company that you will most definitely pay more for. I can attest to that. Now, again, we don't have any around here, but I bring these up as an example because we all have heard of this company, and they do a really good job of putting their values front and center. When you go to their stores, they have these placards hanging from the ceiling with all of their values, what they care about. And in this ad, they say right up front, we want to trust our sources. We want to have the information to make meaningful decisions about what to buy. So, and another line, we are part of a growing consciousness that's bigger than us. So what they're putting forth is more like a movement based on their values, or a community. So the idea there is that when you go and you shop there, yes, you're paying more, but you're part of something. Now, whether or not you believe that's a good thing to do or not, I would rather shop more economically, but they're hugely successful for this very reason, because they've managed to create a community around their values so that you feel part of something as a customer there. Now, this is a quote from the Global Design Officer of Procter & Gamble. He said, "A brand should help you feel better, look better, or be better." And I'd be really interested, I'm not going to stop now, but I'd be really interested to know if each of you can figure out how you might fit into one of those three categories. So are you helping people to feel better, look better, or be better? So your brand, I'm going to go through the different sort of sectors that you may find yourself in, and what your brand may look like. So if you're a for-profit, your quality and consistency still matter a whole lot. Your values, your connection to the community, how accessible and communicative you are with other people, and the experience, like I mentioned, the experience of being in a shop. If you're a nonprofit, we're talking about your impact, how you demonstrate success, how you show that you're making a difference and following through on your mission. And that can be with numbers or with stories. But you want to prove that you're making a difference, because more than anything in a nonprofit brand, it's about transparency, communicating how you're spending funds, and how you're connecting with the community you're dedicated to serve. If you're a self-proprietor like myself, your brand is your product or service, your ability to deliver, your reliability, pricing, but most of all, the experience of working with you. So my brand is my ability to communicate with people, to be responsive, to be empathic, to understand what people want, and to work with them to get what they need to make their business successful. So what are the different elements of a brand? Well, we've mentioned this in the introduction. It's definitely the look and the feel. Larry, you were right on with that. The logo is what people most often associate with a brand, because it's often the first thing we see, because we don't really have the owner of the company or organization ready to tell us what the brand is. We often see the logo first. It's also what people think and say about your brand. Lisa, you mentioned this. It's very much like a person's reputation. So that is what people perceive. So the goal there is to match what you're putting out there with what is being perceived, and we'll get into a little bit of that later. And lastly, it's the voice of your brand. So the personality behind your product or service for people to connect with. And that's going to make up the bulk of this workshop today, because that's what people will connect with. They won't connect with something, if we're thinking online in like a Facebook post. If it sounds robotic, no one's connecting with that. It needs to feel like a real person that's out there. And again, that's especially important online, because you're not going to be able to be there to talk to people. So I want to take just a second to talk about the brand response to the pandemic, because we find ourselves in this situation, and I just wanted to, you'll see throughout there's a couple of different notes about how things have changed, because overall branding, the principles of branding remain the same, but we do find ourselves in a very unique situation, right? So I put up a couple of examples, and these are larger companies just for the fact that we all know who they are and we can relate to them somehow. So let's take a look at Ace Hardware first. This is a screenshot from their mobile site last week, and they've put still open, always essential, forever helpful. So they've managed to make a bold statement on their homepage that's also tied in to their company tagline, which is the helpful hardware folks, I believe, if I'm remembering the jingle correctly. And so they've tied in that helpfulness. They've mentioned that they are open, they are here, and they are essential. And they have someone in the background that's smiling. So I feel like they are acknowledging the situation. They're telling me we're here for you. And they also have a link to learn more about what else they're doing to deal with the current situation. I don't know about you all, but after this whole thing started, I got about, I don't know how many emails from companies that I had engaged with in the past or signed up for their mailing list, what they were doing to deal with the situation with COVID-19. So my inbox was full of, here's our response, this is what we're doing. And while it was a little bit annoying to get all those emails, it was great to see that every company was taking a stand to say, here's what we're doing to keep our employees safe and to keep you safe, whether you're ordering something from us, whether you're coming into our store, just to acknowledge that something big is happening and we have an opinion about it and we're doing something about it. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, the Disney website, which was earlier this week, makes no mention of the pandemic. And I don't believe, I believe that's very intentional. Disney is the most magical place on earth, right? They're not, if you think about their brand and what they're trying to create for people, does it make sense to put something that's very, scary or, too serious on their site? Well, maybe not, but there's no mention at all. So it almost feels like, are they, like, what are they doing to keep people safe? What if I want to come to their park still? How are people, what are people doing to make sure that I can still come and enjoy a vacation there and not get sick? And they came under fire recently because one of the leaders of the company said, we want people to come, but people need to understand they're coming at their own risk. And so there was some pushback against that because they said that doesn't fit the brand of Disney for you to say, come at your own risk. We want to feel safe. And so there's a way to bridge that gap. There's a way to talk about difficult situations as a brand without, sort of turning your back on your brand or without going against your brand, but also not feeling like you're not saying anything. And actually, one more I wanted to mention was Netflix, because I read yesterday that they've gone through, and anyone that hasn't streamed anything in the past year and they're still being charged every month, maybe they don't even know they're being charged, they're going ahead and stopping those charges. They're just canceling the account to say, we're not going to keep charging you. You're not even using our service. So we are going to go ahead into your account and cancel your services. So, I mean, I know they're making lots of money because people are streaming, but I thought that was a really cool thing that they're doing in response to the situation. And we'll get into a little bit more about how you might respond to it as well later on. So speaking of reputation, Jeff Bezos of Amazon said, a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's very much like a reputation for a person. Okay. So the goals for today are to uncover your brand personality, voice, and discover how this can help in marketing, especially online. We're also going to develop, strengthen, or learn about the visual elements of your brand. So let's just start with the basics. Why are we even doing this? Why do we need to develop our brands? Well, ultimately it's going to affect your bottom line. So if people are connecting more with your company, they're going to come to you first. And if you're in a nonprofit, it's going to impact your, it's going to affect your impact and how you're engaging with the people that you serve. And most of all, it helps you stand out among others offering the very same product or service. So a strong brand offers quality and consistency. We already talked about that earlier. It still matters. Authenticity and trust. When I see a statement from your company or organization, I want to feel like it's really you, that it doesn't feel fake, because that doesn't make me trust you. It's also a shortcut in decision making. So when we go to the store, for example, or when shopping online or deciding where to spend our money, there's so many choices. And sometimes we do not have the time to decide, so I have kids and I'm trying to figure out what brand of toys do I want to get. If I want like a little toy truck, well, I know, for example, Melissa and Doug, that's a brand I really like. Why do I like them? Because I know that they care about the environment. They use wood and natural products in their toys. So I'm not going to scroll through pages and pages of results for trucks. I'm just going to go and search for Melissa and Doug, because I know no matter what I get from that brand, it's going to be quality. So it's a shortcut. And it's also an opportunity to be part of something bigger. I would also say that in regarding online versus local shopping, I have felt more recently that local shopping is a movement that people want to be a part of. And now that we have all of those choices online, when we can go to Amazon to get the hammers or the nails or whatever we need to get versus going to the local hardware store, it's so easy to do that. But honestly, when I go to the local hardware store, it does feel like I'm a part of something bigger. You run into people you get to talk about your project you're working on, you realize you need something else for another project, or maybe you find somebody that can offer you tips for what you're doing. So I would definitely put the local movement in that bucket of things that are opportunities to be a part of something bigger. Now, if you have a product, or even on your website, depending on what kind of sector you're in, there's things that I like to call branding add-ons. So for example, like B Corporation or Maine Made. I know Maine Made is like a membership. You might have to qualify or pay or something like that. But even the Get Real, Get Maine. Maine has a unique brand. People love the Maine brand. And so if you have a product and you can get a sticker like Get Real, Get Maine, you put that on there, you're sort of piggybacking on the brand of Maine. So like if Down East Maine had a brand and we had our own sticker, and you could put that on your product, you could put it not even on a product, on a pamphlet for your lodge, or anything that you're selling or is a service. You can add that onto your website. Some other ones, values, whether it's organic, you're a B Corporation, which is a process that you have to go through that has certain benchmarks, or even putting the Better Business Bureau or other like-minded logos on there. It basically says to people, I care about my reputation. So people will know these logos, these symbols, and associate it with your brand. And because they're already established, if you are just getting started, it's a way to kind of jumpstart what you're doing by sort of, again, piggybacking on something that's already established. And I love Maine as an example because it is so unique across the country. All right, and again, jump in if you have any questions about anything. So getting to know your brand. One of the ways you can get to know your brand is understanding who your competition is. And most importantly, how are you different from them? What's unique about what you're offering? Secondly, your audience. Who is your target market? So if you have a shop, who do you see come in through the doors? What do they like? What are they gravitating towards? What's their personality? Get to know them and how they found out about you, most importantly. And your why. Your why is so critical. Why are you doing what you're doing? You could be doing a million different things. Why are you doing this? Why does it matter? If what you were doing wasn't there anymore, what would people miss? Okay. So the why is really important, and it really ties into your brand story. And so in thinking about the online medium, what I'd love to see is the why front and center. So when I go to someone's homepage and I see right there the story, why we exist. So like Lisa, I'll take you as an example because I know we've worked together before with your farm. Why is your farm still there? Well, it's been in your family for generations. We have to keep this tradition going. That's what's so important. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because there aren't that many situations where people have farms that are passed down for so many years. And so that creates an emotional connection. I say to myself, wow, that's really cool. I want to go there and see what that feels like to be a part of something like that. So another quote about reputation, a brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. And that's why we talk about the brand voice, because we as humans have voices, and our companies are a lot like people. They have different sides, and they have reputations, and they have a voice. So our goals are to uncover the person behind your brand, to inform your brand voice. So before you can figure out how your brand speaks, you need to know who your brand is. So if your brand were a person, who would it be? And secondly, we need to determine how to bring out the very best in that person. So we all have lots of qualities, and there's usually 2, 3 things that you can say about a person that's really just unique, that's exceptional. We need to figure out what that is in your brand.
Ashley, we've had a little bit of a sidebar conversation going up in the chat.
Okay.
So one of the comments that was made was, we need a Bold Coast brand sticker. And so there was some agreement there. Well, we have a Bold Coast logo. So I put the website for the Bold Coast, Discover the Bold Coast, into the chat box. And Crystal has said that she can make stickers with the logo.
Oh, very cool.
So Crystal, did you want to just do a quick jump on to mention the what you had said about listing your business?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I just put on too, Crystal, if you can answer this. Is that something businesses can put on there? Okay.
Absolutely. And I think what I need to do for the Bold Coast is create a toolkit. And I'll probably put it on the Discover Bold Coast website. Create a little toolkit that where people can download the logo to use. And I can also create some sort of, I'll design some stickers, and maybe I'll put on that toolkit page that people can contact me to order them.
Also, Crystal, sort of off the bar line, and I don't want to take too much time, but I do know you were part of it too with the 2 Nation Vacation logos and stuff. I know I had received some, but I didn't know if that was still something that was happening. I know we had discussed it with the Down East Acadia Regional too. So
Yeah.
something, a toolkit there either.
Yeah, it's still something that we talk about and promote, but I think the greater Maine Office of Tourism, New Brunswick Tourism effort has sort of dwindled. They had a certain amount of money, and then it was no longer there and didn't get replenished. But we still do talk about it as an experience of this region. And so Jen was mentioning the listing your business on the website. If you look at the Discover Bold Coast website under Trip Tools, I think it's called, there's an interactive map. And we don't have it set up so that you can list your own business. That's something that maybe I should look into for the future. But if you send me a note, I can list your business and just sort of tell me, maybe your website has everything you need or that I need to know to make that listing. But if you want to write your own little blurb, if you look at the other businesses that are on there and see basically what's there. And then also if you send your info, just sort of tell me what categories that are on that map that you'd like to be connected with.
There. Okay,
Great.
so we'll send it back to Ashley with the branding. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so another question, why does my brand need to be a person? So consider your target audience. What kind of person does your target audience respond to? So I don't know if any of you have ever received, I feel like I've received a lot, and I think everybody has on Facebook. Sometimes you'll get a message from somebody that's like, hi, and it's a contact of yours, but it doesn't sound like them. You're like, that's weird. Why would that person send me a message that just says something like that? Then you later find out that their account got hacked and they were sending messages to everybody, and then you have to delete it and all that stuff. You can tell when you get the message that it doesn't sound like that person. It's not like how that person would talk to you. So we can tell when something doesn't feel authentic, when it doesn't feel like how we want it to feel. There's so many different ways of engaging with somebody, and everybody actually has their own way of engaging. So this exercise is about figuring out how to connect with people who make up your audience. Okay, so the first step, and I'm not sure if you have a worksheet or just a piece of paper. Jen, did we get the worksheet out to everybody?
I did not. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I blew that.
No, that's totally fine. Go ahead and just use a piece of paper because it's all the same. And I'd like you to list 5 to 7 traits that best describe your brand. And as an optional thing here, you can also list 2 to 3 traits that you'd like to avoid. Okay. As you're thinking about that, I'm going to go through an example of a local business that I think does a really good job with their branding. This is Tide Mill Farm. And I've been following them for a while. These are some of their Instagram posts. And I really like them and how they communicate with their audience, because they're just really, they're funny, they're informative. You know, in the upper right there, you see they're talking about mackerel skies, which I didn't even know was a thing, you know, but it's really cool to just know something new about the region where I also live. The generational thing in the bottom right, I love to see that, and they sprinkle that in through their posts. And I'm not necessarily saying that they have sat down and came up with like a brand strategy. I think it's just very natural and authentic that they want to talk about the fact that their family works there. In the upper left, you see a video about cows, just because. And so they also have a bit of humor in there, and they like to introduce their animals. And, you know, they use the hashtag Know Your Farmer, because that's a movement that people want to be a part of, is to know their farmer. And in the bottom left, you see this is a way that they've responded to the pandemic situation. They're shown here wearing masks, which basically says, we're trying to keep you safe, we're trying to do what we can. At the same time, they're colorful. You can, I think, tell they're smiling behind their mask. It's sometimes hard to say, but that's just a way that they've addressed that situation. So if I were to come up with some traits, I would say that they're committed to their mission, they're hardworking, family-oriented, fun-loving, and informative. If I were to say things that they are not, I would say they're not exclusive. You know, they're not saying, if you don't buy from us, don't buy that, you know, garbage from the store or whatever. They're not saying anything like that. They're not exclusive, they're not judgmental. They're just putting out there what they do. And here's one more quote to get you thinking. This is from Debbie Millman, who, if you're interested in branding, I highly recommend her. She's written a lot of great articles, books, there's videos online, she's brilliant. And she says, every brand wants to be different from each other. Every person wants to be different from each other. What's the soul of your brand, and how does it connect with other people? And one more thing, I'm just giving you all kinds of tools to come up with these traits, but I do want to introduce you to a way of thinking that I think is especially important in these times. It's based off of design thinking, which doesn't mean you have to design anything. It's just a way of creative problem solving. And I think sometimes branding does call for that. But the focus is on creating things that lead to better products, services, and internal processes by having an approach that encompasses empathy, flexibility, curiosity, and positivity. So what do I mean by that? So empathy, think about who the people are you want to engage with. Be flexible. So you might have an idea of what you want your brand to be like, but be flexible in terms of how other people are seeing you. And maybe you like the way that they're seeing you and you didn't even know that they were seeing you like that. So you can ask them and engage with them, and get some insight there and expand the definition of what you believe your brand is. So be curious and go out and talk to those people that you engage with. And be positive, of course. Like anyway, I mean, I think especially in this situation again, I go back to that. But even though a lot is happening and it's overwhelming sometimes, I think there's a way to frame it, not so that we're being too Pollyanna about it, but just in a positive way, because it's a lot for people. So, and I think this is important now and always in the future, to have that positive spin. Okay, now I will finally let you create the traits that you want your brand to embody and the ones you want to avoid. And if anyone is already done, you can feel free to share. I'm just gonna, let me just see the time. Oh, Jen, quick question. Is my, my video, like where I can see people, is that being recorded? Is that covering my screen, the presentation? I don't think so.
You mean the group chat?
Yeah, or the videos. I don't think it is. It was just a side note. I think you can see most of the text. For some reason, I can't get the videos down.
Okay, so on mine, I have the videos down a column on the right-hand side, and it doesn't cover the text at all.
Okay, perfect.
So it depends on how your the view. You
Yeah.
can use a grid view, small active speaker video, hide the thumbnails, or you could just use the thumbnails.
Perfect. No, I just wanted to make sure that on your screen, because you're recording, that it wasn't covering up the thing.
No.
Okay, perfect.
Ashley,
Yeah.
I had a quick question on this with this thing and what you just recently. Oh, and this is Lisa. I didn't show up. Would you suggest, because of course I'm a farmer right now, and we're really not in our harvest, so I'm not really seeing our customers at the moment. And I have done this after speaking to you, of course, in the past, but maybe going on Facebook, like that's my own social media, and asking our followers, like, how do you see us? What are some of the words you would use to describe us? And even tell them that you're working on developing your brand or your messaging, or
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, if you could do it publicly like that. You could also, if you feel like there's certain people that you've engaged with a lot over the years, that are kind of like your go-to, like your regular customers, you could ask them first, maybe, just to get a good sense, because you want to make sure you're getting it from people that you're getting it from people that have a really good sense of you, and then maybe branch out and do it publicly. And what that would do, that would give you a way to kind of compare, because the people that may have only engaged with you a little bit may have a slightly different impression than the people that like know you and come to you often. But it would be interesting to see. And even if you did do a public forum, you could probably pick out those people and their comments.
Yeah, I feel like, so at least for me, our Facebook page, we're not huge like with members, but we have over like 300 followers. But a lot of them are people who came here as customers or stayed with us and have like almost become part of the family, friends. That seems to be my Facebook page for the business.
Nice. Oh yeah.
Notice newer people are showing up that I don't really remember ever meeting, but a lot of these people have actually showed up here 5 years ago to buy blueberries and now comment on everything and say, oh, I remember when Liam was a baby, and that kind of stuff.
Oh, nice. Well, then, yeah, I think you could definitely, it sounds like you really build relationships with the people that come to the farm. So I would just put it out there generally then and see what people say. I think that's a great exercise.
Lisa, if you did a survey, you could put, one of the questions on it could be, how do you know about us? Bought vegetables, did a blueberry tour, stated our place, or whatever it might be. Or even just have read your Facebook posts, because people might respond to the survey who have absolutely no idea who you are. But if they do know who you are, if you know what angle they're looking at you from,
Okay.
it can help to form things too.
Mhm.
That sounds good. Thanks.
Anybody else want to jump in with a question or share their traits, or anybody have a question or having any difficulty coming up with the traits to describe their brand?
Danielle has her hand up.
Yeah, I quickly made a traits list. I've been taking tons of notes. This is so helpful, actually.
Oh, good.
And some of them overlap. This is specifically for the business, the part of my business that I want to be launching with the singing leading to better health, right? Supporting our health. Expertise and experience. That I am able to create a safe space, inclusivity. And I added a few things that are all sort of part of that, caring, supportive, empathetic. One thing I have discovered I'm really good at over the years is helping people discover things about themselves that they didn't know they could do, and sort of helping you to be your best self. Another is humor. And finally, a way of coping in a positive, by taking positive steps with some of the fears about the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't want to be seen as is judgmental, exclusive, and that includes that my ideal audience, clientele, really spans a lot of ages and a lot of kinds of interests. So it's not easy to just focus that. And finally, I don't want to be seen as old.
I love that. And I think, where you say that your target audience, it spans a different age groups, right, and interests. I think when we talk about your brand voice as we get into this, it's not necessarily, I think that's where you'll find kind of the balance of how do you speak to many different audiences. And one of the things that I recommend is trying to figure out, what age is your voice? And maybe your voice doesn't have an age because you need to be able to talk to all of these different groups. Maybe it's based on just this positive, joyful, pushing people. So it's almost like the voice that tells you can do it, or that encouraging voice. So maybe it's more about how you can help people rather than who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we'll get into that a little bit deeper, but I think your words are great. And I also thought of just joyful, because when you talked about, singing for health, I think singing, think about the feeling that somebody gets when they're singing, and that is what they're going after. That's what you're offering them. I mean, the end result is health, right? And the way that you conduct your business is with expertise, with experience, with inclusivity, and being caring and supportive. But think about the feeling that somebody has when they're singing that will eventually lead to health. And think of those words as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm going to keep moving because I think I'm behind on time, but I can stay over. We can figure that out as we get closer. All right, step 2 is, if my brand were a person, who would it be? So here are some questions to help get you started. And in the example, that we just had, when I mentioned age, you can exclude any of these factors if they don't make sense. So your person doesn't have to be male or female. These are just sometimes you look at a business and you're like, oh, they're definitely male. Like my example later on, Pat's Pizza. I just felt like Pat's Pizza was male. And that can help in the language, it really can. But if any of these don't relate to your brand, that's fine. But here are some to get you started. So is this person male or female? What is his or her age? How would you describe this person to a friend? What would you say about them? What does this person enjoy or not enjoy? And what does this person value? So this person is not necessarily describing the owner of a business. It doesn't have to, and it doesn't have to describe a typical customer or client. It's simply the personality or the tone of your brand, of the company or organization. Now, an exception there is, like in my case, if you're a freelancer or if you're an entrepreneur, the business really is you and the services that you're offering. However, it can be a particular aspect of you. You can narrow in on a certain part of you that you want to emphasize to build your brand. So I have a couple of examples that I'm going to go through just to help you if you're struggling with this exercise or you need to just see more examples, because it is kind of abstract how a company becomes a person. So let's look at Columbia Falls Pottery. Now here's how I would describe the person behind that brand. She's female, in 40s or 50s. Her house is probably like cottagey. It's cozy, eclectic, and has lots of natural textures and materials. It always smells good. Maybe there's something cooking. And she's always reinventing her look and bringing in new pieces, but she stays true to herself. There's a core self there. She's dependable, loves the outdoors, and always knows just the right gift to give for birthdays and holidays, which is a special talent to have, okay? So that's how I would describe Columbia Falls. And here's an example of online messaging. So how do I take that voice and turn it into like a Facebook post? Now this is considering everybody's staying at home now. Hi everyone, I've been busy in my home studio creating some beautiful items to brighten your days at home. Use one of my signature pie plates for your next baking adventure and fill your kitchen with beauty and delicious aromas. I posted my favorite blueberry pie recipe below. Share a link to your favorite recipe and get a link for 10% off in my online store. So that's a way to be positive, be helpful, also promote something that you've made and bring people to your website as well. You don't necessarily have to have a coupon in all of your online messaging, but this is just one of those ways if you have an e-commerce site or want to set one up to link between, say, a Facebook post and your website. Let's take one more example before I turn it over to you all. Pat's Pizza, like I mentioned, definitely seemed like a male energy to me. Early 40s, loves to have family and friends over on the weekends or after work to have a drink and some food. There's always something on the stove or on the grill. He tells everybody to make ourselves at home. The door is always open. He's a huge sports fan, easygoing, relaxed, and knows everyone in the neighborhood. Okay, so here's some example messaging. And this is kind of before and after, because the first one I felt like described it better, and I did go in and add some things recently given the pandemic, but I'll go through both of them. So, hey guys, the game is on and we've got 3 new brews on tap. Run, don't walk to grab a seat at the bar and catch up with the gang at Pat's. So now it might look a little bit different. Hey guys, we're open for business and want to be sure to keep you and your family safe. We've started doing things a bit differently at our restaurant, but want you all to know we're still your same neighborhood spot with the best pizza around. So it's just kind of like an easygoing, like, hey man, like, you know, I feel like you all can kind of get that vibe. If you've been to Pat's Pizza, you know what I'm talking about. And it's funny because I did these like pretend scenarios because I wanted to really illustrate certain points, but I was recently on their website and it's actually really similar to this. So that was kind of funny, but yeah. All right, so now it's your turn. Create your brand persona. Let's take a few minutes. Here are the questions to help get you started. Again, you can exclude any of these. If there's other things that you just want to throw in there, go ahead. And I'd love to hear from some of you that we haven't heard from. Let's see, we've got Crystal, Pat, Denise, anybody that wants to jump in and tell me a bit about their brand persona. Let me just make sure. Okay. So I'll let you have a couple of minutes. And this could be a good time too, just to jump in if you have any questions or you want to talk it out with me while everybody's kind of getting those ideas down on paper.
So there are a couple of folks that I can't see because they're not using video. So instead of relying on raised hands, if people could just jump in and speak up or put something into the chat, that would be good. Although I believe we've lost one person.
I'll go. This is Crystal.
Okay.
So thinking about the Down East Acadia region,
Mhm.
the gender is female, the age is young at heart. This person values outdoor adventure, experiencing local color, hanging out with family and friends, sunshine, fresh air, health. Values are connection with people, and connection with people in nature, discovery of yourself through solitude and relaxation. Um, Down to earth, the person is down to earth, welcoming, and dislikes crowds and tourist trap shops.
Oh, I love this. Now, can you see how that might translate to messaging, or do you feel like, where are you at in terms of developing messaging online? Do you feel like the stuff that you've been putting out so far fits into this naturally?
I do. And so this has always sort of been the brand intent. And so now, of course, we were already transitioning more to really focusing on the outdoor adventure, nature, solitude, health, connection with family, but we'll be doing that more intensely now.
Yes, definitely. And you mentioned something about the beauty of the outdoors or something. Um,
Yeah, connection with nature, and self, discovery of self through solitude and relaxation. I didn't mention beauty, but that's certainly
okay.
a piece of it. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I was just relating that because you said female, and this is not a conversation about only females, appreciate the beauty of the outdoors. It's not like that. But it's very like, to talk about the colors or the beauty of the space. There's something about that that feels feminine. It doesn't mean that only females can talk about that.
Right.
You
I
know what
chose that. I chose that for the sort of the nurturing aspect
I
of that,
mean?
discovering yourself and connecting with people and place.
Definitely. I love that because I think people forget that when you go into nature, there is a back and forth between you and the space. Like it's not like you're just going out into solitude and you feel more alone than you did before you
Right.
left your house. You go out in nature, even if you're alone, and all of a sudden you have an experience and describing that experience and remembering that experience or talking about it. I think everybody that's been out knows, but we sometimes forget
Yes.
that it does feel fulfilling in that way. Okay, anybody else want to share their brand persona at this point or have any questions?
If nobody else wants to go, I can,
Mhm.
just to give another. So my person, I think my voice, especially on my social media, is definitely female. Probably comes across a little younger than I am. So maybe late 30s, early 40s. I would, which is strange because most of the pictures are of my father and my grandson. So, but it's definitely a female voice. I would describe this person as probably very attached to land, but liking to learn new things. Very interested. Well, I don't even know how to put that. A lot of my posts are about, in a way, about learning new things like gardening, which would seem strange, but about gardening or even about family values, family being together and doing things together, spending holidays together and doing some of the tasks together. And they really enjoy probably, truthfully, the beach, hiking, that kind of stuff. That's how I would see that. Yeah, I do find it very hard though. I took your advice years ago and tried to be very just natural. Although sometimes I find it hard to maybe what I have, I wouldn't say consistent, but to get my voice out there or to the voice of the farm out there. Because what I'm trying to do is also just relate the value of the family farm and it being generational and that kind of thing.
And do you find that in those posts, there's a natural segue to talk about like the products that you're offering? Because I'm thinking about like, if you're, talking about the blueberries on the farm, oh, and we have this blueberry jam, or if you're talking about the trails in the area, oh, that's something that you can do when you stay with us. And it without sounding too like selling like that. Just
Yeah, I do. That is my problem. I don't find it natural. That does not translate. And I'm trying harder, but it's just more the farm, and because I'm also learning, and other people might have the same thing with the business. It's like, do really people want to know that? I mean, do they really care that we're planting peas? Kind of thing, but yeah, I'm finding it very hard to take my natural voice, because it's not something I grew up with or the family ever really did. It's sell. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's the difference between, selling and being humble, saying like, yes, we stand behind our product 100%. We love it. We think it's great. And we don't want to sell it because that would be, bringing it down a notch, or we'd look like, I totally 100%. I think everybody on here knows what she's talking about. And at the same time, you asked, do people really want to know? Yes, people really want to know. They want to know what you're planting, what you're selling, how they can get it. I want to know. If I'm going to your Facebook page and I'm reading, because that's, if you can connect it to something that you really love, I think the thing for you is to not be afraid that people are going to perceive you in a way that you don't want. I think it's about not holding back because you think people might perceive you as wanting to sell something. I don't think, just knowing you, and if it were somebody else, I might need more information, but I feel like, I don't think people will take you that way. And I think it's really valuable to make that crossover. And maybe you get started just by saying, the things that you're learning in the garden. So you're not just posting a picture of it, but you're saying, here's what I learned, this is this, and start some conversation. So there's just like a next level of communication, because I think between posting a picture and selling a product, there's a lot of different things that you can do and a lot of different conversations that you can have that might feel more comfortable for you, so that you don't have to just feel like you're just selling, but you can engage people in different ways, whether it's about what you're planting, and without even saying, hey, we sell this product. It could just be, we're planting this and we're hoping to add it to our jam this year. Find out more information, and like on your website, have the story about how things are made. It's not just a link to your website to buy something, but it's a link to your website to learn more about how things are made and the process of it. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Just a matter of developing the skills to do that.
So Lisa, I seem to remember you posting a blueberry pie recipe.
A blueberry muffin recipe recently, which was a big hit.
A long time ago. I'm talking like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you posted a blueberry pie recipe. You could say something along the lines of, our blueberries are so ripe for this right now. Come and get them. We can help you with yours. Or, what's your favorite recipe? Do you add cinnamon? That kind of thing, and start a conversation too.
Right. Yeah, and I recently did that with muffins, and it was I actually had people make them and post pictures.
There.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a good, yeah.
Great. Anybody else want to share or have questions? All right, I'm going to move right along. Now, when we think about the persona, like if you're thinking about a person, there's so many great things about the person. They're multifaceted and complex, like we all are, but there's a couple of things about that person that are just great. So if we're thinking back to, and this relates to what you want to be known for and what you uniquely deliver to your audience. So if we go back to the Columbia Falls pottery example, the thing that really stands out to me is that she always knows just the right gift. So how that translates into the brand is that I know I can go into her shop and find something at any price point that would just be a really nice gift. Not only that, but I know she does a really good job with gift wrap. So if I'm in a hurry, I know I can stop in, get a great gift, and it'll be a hit. Okay, so that's something that's really unique, and maybe she puts things up online that would make great gifts for Mother's Day, or does things special for holidays and things like that. Pat's Pizza, going back to that example, he always tells us to make ourselves at home. So in the previous example, it was a tangible item, a gift. Here, we're looking at something that's for people who have a business or service where someone's coming into a space. And space is so important. I mentioned before, like there's certain lodges or hotels or stores that you go in, and it has a feeling. It has, you know, the lighting is just so, or it's cozy, or it's warm, or the AC is always on, whatever you like. But Pat's Pizza, I would say it has a homey, cozy vibe. You just feel comfortable. You don't have to worry about what you're wearing or how you look. You know you'll probably see somebody there. You feel like you're at home. And that's the thing that's unique. So just take a minute, think about your brand, and think about what is that special thing that you can offer more so than anybody else. And I'm really interested, actually, Larry, are you still with us? I can't scroll down on my videos because I got the presentation.
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. I'm really interested just to hear from you a little bit, because we talked at the beginning and I thought your business was really neat. What would you say about your brand? Like, how have you been finding this exercise? Where are you at in your thinking?
As far as bringing out the best in my brand, I don't know. The name is Woodland Treasure, and it doesn't say anything about coins in it, and that's what I basically sell. But going back to the previous exercise, I would think it would be a male, a treasure hunter. I keep thinking about the Curse of Oak Island, or hunting for a sunken ship at sea. You don't see a lot of women doing that. I'd like, you know, that the person would be persistent, enjoy history, enjoy the pursuit of the hunt. You know, just like somebody's building a coin collection, they enjoy the pursuit. They enjoy looking for just the right coin, and hopefully I'll have that. But, you know, I like to think that a customer's getting what they paid for. I only sell certified coins from the 3 major grading services, and not raw coins. So if they're thinking they're getting an MS65, well, there's a third party out there that's graded it as MS65, and I'm not somebody that's going to lie about the grade and try to get more money out of them. You know, that ties into my brand personality.
I love that. I love that, because reputation is so important. I mean, especially online. I know you sell on eBay, and you're getting the ratings and the reviews are there for that reason, because people want to know, especially in something as valuable as coins, that they're getting what they pay for. A couple of things that stood out for me from what you said. First off, when I did see the name of your company, I thought it was things made from wood. I have to say, just because of the woodland. So, and people not knowing the region and things like that may think something similar. If people have bought from you before or see what you sell, I think it's a non-issue, but that's just something to think about. The other thing is, when you talked about the treasure hunting, I thought that just painted such a cool picture in my mind. And I'm wondering if in your descriptions of what you're selling, if you're including stories of how you found the particular coins, or if anywhere, whether you're on social media or whatnot, if you're sharing the stories of how you found it, sharing the stories of the hunt, as you said.
Well, no, I don't share that aspect. I share history of the coin. You know, I always put history, the historical aspect of, you know, and how many were minted and things like that, how rare they are and stuff like that. But I don't, you know, I don't really go out hunting, so I don't know what I could describe. You know, I buy them at auction and stuff like that, and try to get value for the money. But I don't literally go digging for buried treasure or anything like that.
But I think describing the history kind of, that feels like it kind of fulfills that, describing like how it moved through time. So it started here and now it ended up here. So I think that's a bit of that story that's just really interesting. So it's good to know that you share that. And then the other thing I wanted to know is whether you're part of a community of coin collectors, or you have a website where coin collectors would find you and there would be any kind of discussion or things like that.
I belong to ANAX, American Numismatic Association, ANA, I mean. My community is other coin dealers when I go to the coin shows, and there's some coin clubs in the area I'm not members of because they're too far away, but I run into them at coin shows. I've developed 3 websites, but I haven't gotten to the point where I want to start it. It's a lot of work, and eBay does all that for me right now, and I don't know if I want it. It's going to take probably years for people to find my website, know I exist, and I got to pay all these extra fees, hosting fees and what have you. But I am on Facebook and I am on Instagram, and I can advertise there at times, and I direct them to eBay. I mean, eBay does everything for me, and it's a lot easier that way. My repeat business is about 25%. I'd like to get that up. I have been doing postcard mailers and in my packages to remind them, of my website, my Instagram account, and my phone number, and all that.
Yep, definitely. Well, actually, I mean, based on what you've said, my recommendation too would be to focus more so on your social media than the website, because it does take time for people to find a website.
Yep.
Especially if you're directing them away from it anyway. But on social media, you have the opportunity to talk to people about the history of the coin and to start a discussion, which by making that public, really almost increases the value for what you're selling. Because if you're engaging with somebody in a one-on-one conversation, even if that person doesn't end up buying the coin, that conversation there is now public for other people that may. And also, like Facebook, for example, I would put more of your energy into Facebook, because then, and you may have already done this, but by friending and following like-minded folks, or like organizations that also that you're a member of or that you're not a member of, doesn't matter, make a community, make a rich community for yourself on Facebook of people that are interested in coins, and make everything public so that people can see the conversations about those things. I mean, you can have a website, but I would really put more of your energy into the Facebook, and just keep focusing on telling the story of the history and the value, and also encourage people that you sell to rate you on Facebook as well, so that you can get even more repeat customers.
Yeah, I do it, refer them to some of my eBay listings, but half the time I just put interesting articles from Coin World or something like that to get people interested in the subject,
Yeah, but I would just I would also throw in there, and that's great what you're doing, just throw in there, products that you're selling, and talk about the history of those as well. I think that would,
just as a quick,
good
if I
idea.
can throw in a quick aside,
Yep.
the June 4th is going to be expanding reach on your business Facebook. So that's another one to watch for, Larry, that might be helpful to you. GoDaddy.com New Ventures Maine is working with GoDaddy.com right now. If you go do their video, it's a video training. If you do the video training, you can get free web hosting through GoDaddy.com for 2 years.
Oh, really?
And they will also include a shopping cart, so you can do online sales through it. So that's part of what GoDaddy is doing right now to help businesses get things moving.
Oh, wow.
So that would give you an opportunity to try a website without having actual cost related to it. I don't know if registering your domain name might be something, but the actual web hosting is free. And just as a quickie in the chat, we've got a few different brand ideas for you. One is a pirate, one is Indiana Jones, and one is a hunting guide.
Okay.
Your description as you were going through, those are the pictures that people had.
I've got two different logos right now, and but I just did them myself. But they're nothing to do with what you just said. That would probably tie in a lot better.
Yeah, I like the pirate idea. Also because that's kind of something of this area, right? I mean, the Downies, the Pirate Festival, and all of that. Like, it ties into the larger region as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Good idea.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Larry.
No, I just said that those are good ideas.
Oh.
I'm going to have to look at GoDaddy and a pirate logo now.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm gonna move along unless, Jen, there was anything else from the chat.
No, that's it from the chat, but other than Rhonda French has left. So Rhonda and Lori have gone, Lori have gone off.
Okay.
The local happenings, Sunrise County Economic Council's resource that goes out every week, has the link in it to the New Ventures Maine website option. So Larry, if you're not signed up for that, you can let me know and I can sign you up later.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to go I'll move along so we can get most of this in before our time's up. All right, so we did talk a little bit about this. Try it out on social media. Think about the person behind your brand. What would this person say? How would they say it? And see what people are saying about your business. Does it match how you want to be perceived? I go back again to what you put out there, matching what is perceived. That's the ideal scenario. And if not, it's always great to engage with people and ask them how you could make it better, because that not only shows that you're addressing that problem, but it shows that you're a brand that cares about what people think and will do what they can to make it right. So a website and print materials are great places to tell your brand story because they're longer and they're always going to be there, as opposed to Facebook. You can put a great post and then it kind of gets lost in the feed unless you sort of pin it to the top, which you can do. But a website and print materials are great for telling your story. Social media is a great place for regular engagement and consistency, and both allow you to express your brand voice. Another fun idea, if you do have a website, is to think about different call to actions for your buttons. It used to just be that buttons were like, click here, things like that. Now they're getting so much more creative and fun, and it's a way to sort of insert your brand in just a few words. It's just a really fun thing to do. It doesn't take a lot of energy, but it really shows that you're a bit outside the box, a bit creative. And it's also really engaging. Like, if I think about the "what are you waiting for" button, I'll ask myself, what am I waiting for? So it does kind of allow you another chance to engage with people and get them to do what you're asking them to do on your site. If you have different audiences, if you speak to different age groups, that's okay, because a person can make subtle changes in the way, we can make subtle changes in the way that we talk. So I'm going to talk differently to my 2-year-old than I am to my grandmother, and that doesn't mean I'm not being authentic, right? It's just different ways of speaking. It all comes from the same place. Different times we find ourselves in, that's okay. A reassuring voice is more important than ever. All right, so here we are at visual identity and logo design. This is a shorter section, so we're nearing the end, so I can take questions. But I put up the Apple Computer Company design, logo design next to their current logo to show you how far a logo can evolve over time, and how just generally sort of the aesthetic has gone from much more decorative, complex logos to really simple. We find ourselves in a very simplistic, modern, flat design space right now, but I just thought that's a really cool comparison. So your logo is the most important element of your visual identity, and it should reflect your brand personality. If you already have a logo, you can bring out more of your brand personality in complementary fonts and colors, like on your print materials or your website. Now that's saying that you are happy with your logo already. You can carry those colors over so it feels more consistent across all of your marketing materials. If you're not happy with your logo, that's okay. You can update it or change it. Just don't do it too often, because that leads to some inconsistencies, to some trust issues. It's just not good to change your brand, your logo too often. If you don't have a logo, that's awesome, that's fine. Here's your chance to think about what your brand personality, how it can come out in a new logo design. So the elements of a logo involve obviously your company or organization name. It can include a visual element like an icon, a graphic, even lines or different visual elements like that. And of course, color and typography, the colors and the fonts that you choose to use. So a very quick how-to, questions to ask yourself. In terms of the graphic, is it going to be literal or abstract? In the case of the pirate, is it literally going to be a cartoon pirate, or is it going to be like a sword or a pirate hat? Is it going to be modern or historical? In terms of the colors, is your brand more natural, like a earth colors, or vibrant, super bright? I'm doing a logo right now for a company focused on safety, and so all the colors in the logo are matching those, caution signs and things like that. Is it muted? Is it pastel? Is it more of a peaceful vibe? For typography, is it bold? Is it subtle? Is it modern or historical? And do you have a tagline? If you do, you should have versions of your logo with your tagline and without, since logos, as we know, can be printed on a sign and be huge, or they can be printed tiny on a business card and you can hardly read a tagline anyway. So it's good to have a couple different versions, and also versions that, if it's a very long logo, have your designer, or if you're doing it yourself, do two versions, one that's longer and one that's more square, so that you can put those in those social media profiles and you don't lose half of it or make it very small. Consistency is key. We mentioned consistency in terms of quality of your product or service, but it's also important in terms of how you promote your brand across your brand materials. If you work with a designer, make sure you get a brand guide that's going to tell you all the fonts you're going to use in your print materials, the fonts used in your logo, as well as the colors that were used in the logo, and some complementary colors that you may want to try out in your brand materials, just to kind of break away. Like if your logo is only one or two colors, like orange and red, like you don't want everything to be orange and red necessarily. Maybe like another more common color might complement those well and give you some more flexibility. Now there's a lot to read in terms of color psychology. You can get really into it if you have that creative sensibility. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just do something that feels right for you. I have a sense that every one of you, in thinking about your current project, can think of some colors that feel like they make sense. When I talk to people, they usually do. More so in this area, actually more so in general, it tends to be in the blues and the greens. I don't know if it's because we're next to water, but that's just a very popular color option. So don't discount some of the more unique colors like purple or orange, or even pink or brown, that are much more unusual, and in a sea of logos can really help you stand out, because we're really seeing a lot of blacks, greens, browns, grays right now. Here are a couple of examples just to show you what I'm talking about. You see the logo, the original logo for Instagram. It's fun, friendly. It's the way it's a script. It's almost like somebody wrote it. They're not taking themselves too seriously. Whereas FedEx is like this strong, bold, sans serif type. You can tell they're trusted. They have a reputation. They've been around for a while. And these words, by the way, these aren't words I came up with. They were from a survey of people when they were shown these logos, words that they came up with. You can have a logo, just your initials, like IBM, or an organic shape. which is funny because this is the BP logo and it's very much like nature, and they're a petroleum company. So you can see how it gives you a different vibe than the actual product, but it's what they want to go for. They want to be seen as a company that does care about the environment, despite the fact that they're a petroleum company. So customers are more likely to ascribe a logo that they recognize with positive attributes, namely trusted, respected, reliable, and premium. Whereas consumers, when they're viewing a new logo or one that they don't remember seeing previously, are more likely to assign negative attributes to the logo. So that's why it's so important to get your logo out there everywhere and anywhere you can on all of your materials, so that people start to recognize it. So in terms of trying this out in real life, become more recognizable, like I just mentioned, by attaching your logo to all of your work, any opportunity that you have, any touch point with your audience, whether, you know, Larry, you mentioned putting a postcard in with the product, having your logo on that. Obviously business cards is a natural one, but just everything that you do, have that logo on there attached to your product or service. Be consistent with your style. That's going to build trust and reputation. It shows that you really put thought into it and you have a cohesive strategy, which means that you're established and have really thought this out and really want to be consistent and build trust. You can change if needed, but again, not too often, because that can lead to mistrust or confusion. All right, 3 takeaways from today. Intentionally decide who your brand is. Like we've done today, we're sitting down and really brainstorming about who your brand is and how you want to be perceived. People will perceive you one way or another, but think about how you want to be perceived, and then you have some kind of benchmark for scrolling through comments or seeing reviews and seeing if those 2 things match. So let this inform your marketing communications as well as daily decisions. Deliver on your brand promise. Quality and consistency, I've mentioned it several times throughout, but those still matter so much. And that's what leads to a deeper level of trust and creates that relationship so people will keep coming back. Be consistent with your brand voice and visual identity. Be authentic and be transparent. So that's it. Thank you very much. I'm open to taking as many questions as you have. If you want to circle back and tell me the results from your the exercise that we did with your brand voice, just let me know what you think and if you have any questions.
And Ashley, just in case anyone has to leave, because we are just a few minutes past end time, can we send out the PowerPoint? That was a question that was asked in the chat.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so that will be going out later, and the recording will be available online. So